you're being recorded. Okay, great. I am going to share my screen so we can follow along on the slides.
While Lily's pulling up her slides, I'll talk. Lily and Pam have made amazing slides. And okay, here you go.
Hopefully I'm not too slow on the slides up. So we've run through some of the basic stuff, but there's definitely that bilingual set of presentations available if you need them. So first, I'm just going to go through what we're going to be covering today. We'll have a brief explanation and history of Canada's free agents, a little bit about how the program works. Then we're going to talk a little bit about where all of free agents are located, both in terms of geographical location, classification, all of those types of pieces. Then we're going to look at the two sort of flip sides of the program in free agent autonomy, and then also the responsibilities you take on as part of the program. Finally, we're going to look at eligibility to apply, and then there will be a series of slides that are speaking to service design before we break into the question period. So they're not represented on the outline here today, but you can stay tuned for those. They're coming very shortly. On the Slido front, we've included a QR code that you can feel free to scan with your mobile phone if you choose to. Pam has dropped that link in the chat as well, or you can just go to sli.do and enter in the code CFAALC, which is our bilingual acronym for the program. So to start with, what is Canada's free agents? So it's a little bit like Canada's version of the gig economy in the government. It's a program that's focused on providing greater autonomy and mobility to federal public servants, but also helping to meet short-term needs for hiring managers. So those who are finding that they have more work to do, but don't necessarily need an indeterminate public servant. It allows these indeterminate public servants the opportunity or the chance to go on specific project-based predetermined assignments for lengths of time, so they can choose different assignments across the government. Each of these free agents reports to a talent manager, so we have one of those on the line in Nicola Bill. She's our talent manager at Treasury Board Secretariat, but there's one at each of the 4 home departments. And then there is also a central support team within the program, which is comprised of course, the talent managers, the business manager, Pamela James, and then usually also a program lead. There's also sometimes a little bit of support staff on the administrative side at each of the home departments.
Okay, so where are Canada's free agents? We do have approximately 90 free agents in the program right now. That is a pretty large number spread across 4 home departments. Our program started at NRCan, expanded into TC and then TBS, and most recently into ISED. When free agents are invited into the program, if you're successful in the process and you're invited into the program, you would be deployed into one of those home departments. That means a deployment is a permanent move. So when you leave your current job to become a free agent, that is a permanent shift, and your current manager would then be free to staff behind you to fill that position because you don't own that position box anymore. So free agents are deployed into one of the home departments, and from there they get to work on assignments across government. We currently have free agents that are located across the country from coast to coast to coast in almost every province and territory. Next slide. Okay. So a few facts about being a free agent. The free agents get to select their own projects. They determine their own career path. They have a great deal of autonomy over what sort of work they want to pursue. So, you know, they take project work, usually, not always, where problem solving is needed, encouraged. It's a temporary form of employment. So the person hiring a free agent should not be expecting you to stick around for the rest of your career. We have a database of incoming requests. I receive requests from hiring managers like across government, across the country, and I share those requests with free agents through a database and through Slack posts. And free agents then who are looking for the next assignment will look at those requests and decide which hiring managers they want to talk to about fit for a role that they've seen. Or sometimes free agents have a network of people that work in the field that they're interested in, that they can talk to and say, you know, are you hiring? What do you need right now? Can we talk about maybe doing an assignment? So free agents find assignments through a variety of manners, but We'll talk in a minute about accountability. The free agents, they find their own assignments. That's key. We are mobile employees in indeterminate positions. So you leave one indeterminate position for another one. Now your indeterminate substantive position is as a free agent. And then you go and you join teams for a set period of time for a free agent assignment. Throughout the career as a free agent, we do receive ongoing learning and professional development opportunities, both through the program, through a regular training budget through your substantive, and also on occasion, you'll take an assignment that provides you with some learning and development opportunities as well. That's part of the conversation about which assignments are good fits for you and which ones would be a stretch. What kind of training is available for that sort of thing. And then also maybe, the best part, in my opinion, is that we also participate in a very diverse and large community of free agents, both current and past, and support staff that, are here to be part of that community as well. We have ongoing fora for collaborating with other free agents. We find that when we find ourselves in a situation where we have a problem or a task to do that we're not familiar with, don't know how to handle it, we take it back to the hive mind, and there's like 100 people in the Slack channels that are there to help you solve the problem or figure out what your next steps ought to be. It is absolutely a strong support network, and it bolsters our ability to deliver in our projects. Okay, so I alluded to this. This is important. What are the free agents responsible for? As a free agent, you're responsible for seeking out your first and all future assignments. We don't tell free agents what assignments they're going to take. We provide them with opportunities and expect them to select something that is suitable to their classification level, to their skill set, something that's going to be appropriate for them. We expect free agents to commit themselves to ongoing learning and development. We include some self-study in that. So be curious and learn more about, what it is that you're hoping to do in the assignment that you're in, and where you want to go from there. And of course, on the job learning as well. We expect free agents to contribute to the program, support their peers in a wide variety of ways. We showcase our skills to each other through, our free agent gatherings that we do periodically, to share what we know and what we've learned along the way with each other. Sometimes free agents will offer separate learning opportunities for their colleagues as well. Free agents help out with recruitment campaigns. So if you do get screened into this process, you can expect to see some existing free agents on some of your the steps along the way. And of course, we expect free agents to meet the requirements of their employment. So performance management things, leave, et cetera. And, underlying all of that, of course, is the fact that the free agents move from one assignment to the next. There's a lot of change. We do relied on them heavily to integrate into those new teams and to be an active member, to deliver on what they're expected to do, to, I love these words, to maintain a strong commitment to public service and delivering on the work commitments that you've agreed to when you take an assignment. Back to Lily.
Myself back off mute. So now we're going to just talk a little bit about a broad overview of how the recruitment process works. This is a similar process to how we've been doing it in past years, including when Pam, Susan, and I came into the program, but we have tweaked things along the way. So if you've come in and seen some of our links, you may have already seen the self-assessment. This is a tool that we put out there. We don't look at any of the results that you put in, but it's a chance for you to reflect and think about whether life as a free agent in your professional setting is actually going to suit you. Will you be happy doing it? Will you thrive? Do you find change really stressful, or does it energize you? So it's a chance to take a look at who you are and whether you think you might like to be a free agent and be good at it. After you do that self-assessment, you get an email back from our online platform that'll invite you to start your online application. We've tried to keep this pretty lean. It doesn't look, unfortunately or fortunately, like a classic jobs.gc.ca process. It's a lot shorter. So what we've tried to do is compress, give you a first page full of information about the program and some other required info from TVS and others regarding like the COVID policy right now and that type of thing, and privacy, and then give you an opportunity to download the questions and a little sort of glimpse at what information you're going to be asked to provide in the application. Second page is all employee and demographic information. So where do you work right now? What's your classification, your language levels, and a little bit of information about you. And then, of course, at the bottom, you'll have the chance to express whether or not you'd like to be considered for the service design stream that we're piloting. And then on the next page, you'll have just 2 questions that we ask you to respond to, and you do have some room for creativity there. I will flag that you do not have to create a stunning video documentary or a really, really beautiful audio podcast for us. You can choose the way that you feel best represents and lets you demonstrate how you meet the attributes to become a free agent. So feel pressure. We also wanted to leave room for you to express yourself in the best way possible for you. If you get screened through that online application phase to a set of interviews, we would call them one-on-one, but it'll probably be you plus a few people from the free agent program to go through some questions to let us get to know you better and assess some of the other attributes. If you make it through that stage, we then move to a group set of interviews, which is really sort of a bit of a simulation. It lets us see how you react in a team setting, how you work with others. And as you'll see, some of the attributes like leadership and team orientation, humility, empathy, we want to see those things in action when you work with other people. So that's one of those chances for us to assess you in a different setting. If you make it through that stage, then we start checking on your references to see what other people's experiences have been like with you in the workplace or other areas. And then we would look at strategic placement in one of the CFA 4 home departments. So as has been mentioned, that's Natural Resources Canada, where things started, Transport Canada, Treasury Board Secretariat, and ISED. So I think a little bit of the background about how that specific stage of the process works is that you would receive a conditional offer saying that you had been successful through the screening process. Then we get free agents to secure their first assignment. In discussion with their talent manager, of course, Pam has mentioned that there's a directory of incoming requests from hiring managers. So there's lots of different jobs that you can look at talking to the hiring manager about. Once you secure that first assignment, the first day of your assignment is also your deployment into the program. So those things happen concurrently. And I will say as well, we're looking at having as well additional information sessions, not totally unlike this one, but with a bit more of the detail that you'll need to be set up for success as a free agent when you come into the program. I'm going to pass the mic over to Susan and or Nicola, whoever wants to jump in to go through the service design slides, and I'm happy to change the slides as you're ready.
Oh, thank you so much, Lily. Really appreciate that. I'm going to start to drive, and Nicola is really thoughtful about building out on what we're about to say. And I'll also note we have our colleague Lena with us and maybe our colleague Kate. So I am a free agent myself, just like Lily and Pam, based at Treasury Board Secretariat. I think I would say there's a couple of ways that we could introduce this part of the conversation. If you're interested in service design, that's wonderful. Welcome to the community. We're going to also talk with you about a few more ways to get involved if you'd like to. How do I say? Such an interesting field and such a good time to do it. And we're hoping to grow that community both through the program and with colleagues who aren't free agents, but who are either career service designers or people who are curious about it. So consider this, you're here. Therefore, you're in the tent. We're delighted to have you here. And in a couple of moments, we'll share info about an event. And Lena, who's on the call, has made a LinkedIn group, and I'm going to be judicious and pass it on to all of you. But joining those things is not a precondition for applying to the program, of course. So those of you who know that you're service designers already know that. Those of you who have lots of service design skills or are curious and going like, what on earth is Susan talking about? How do we define it? So for the policy nerds on the call, you could have a look at the policy on service and digital. There's some great definitions out there. We've borrowed one from the Canadian Digital Service in the same way the decks are linked in the chat. So is the link to this. So think about designing good services for people to use. Think about the palettes of human-centered design techniques out there. And I mean that broadly. So that's great. And why are we excited about this? Because how do we bring all of these things together to develop awesome things for the work that we do, both for the end users of whatever the thing is that we're making, or people along the way? How can we make it as human-centered as possible? Just before we move forward, Nicola, is there anything you want to add there? People ask us, like, you may have seen, there are a few ways people define design work. The tent is big here, okay? But the goal is services for Canadians. Okay, prochaine diapo, mesdames. Are you eligible?
I will say as well, Susan, that I skipped the broad eligibility slide for free agents. So I'm just going to skip back towards that one so that we can see the broad eligibility, and then I'll come forward to the service design.
And Lily's spot on, because the first thing to do to qualify is to qualify as a free agent. Well, no, even a step before it, to decide that free agency is right for you, and then to qualify. And I will say, it sounds like it's, the process is big. It was the most human feeling job process I've personally ever gone through. Like, I love my examiners still. Lily, over to you.
Yeah, so I unfortunately booted and headed over to Susan before we got through this stuff, but it's good because it actually aligns with the order for the eligibility of the service design stream. So we've hinted at some of these pieces, but you're eligible to apply to free agents if you're an indeterminate public servant below the EX-1 or equivalent level. Various language profiles, so I've listed a few of those here based on your classification group and level. We do look for, at the higher end of the spectrum, more bilingualism, and if you're closer to the entry levels, there will be less pressure on that front. As Pam noted, we've got free agents across country, so if you're sitting in a region right now, so are both Pam and I. And I think actually Susan might be in the region right now too. So there's people across Canada. Don't let that stop you from applying, because definitely we are open to having folks from across the country in the program. And I will say as well, various security requirements. So there are some assignments that will require secret security clearance and others that will only require reliability. And so you might have a limitation on that front if you only have reliability in terms of which assignments you can take, but you do not have to have secret in order to get into the program more broadly. But in the case of Treasury Board Secretariat, there is an expectation. So to join the service design stream, you will need to have secret clearance. Just for anybody who's joined on the call today who was unable to attend yesterday, but isn't applying for the service design stream. So I'm going to skip forward to Susan's slide and I will hush up again.
And I'll come back saying, so first, I would encourage everyone, if you are thinking about going through the process, go through the process. Like, do the self-assessment and consider applying. I found it one of the most empowering things I did. And we've got some good blog posts from colleagues who went through the process and didn't get in. We've got some from colleagues who decided not to, but to operate as quasi-free agents anyways. Like, this is a program, but more broadly, it's also a mindset. So qualify yourself into the program. And then you can decide if you're sticking your hand up as someone who is a deep dive vocational service designer, or if you're like me and you're interested and enthusiastic, but might not be there, and you want to be part of the community in your own way. Like, that's great. All good things. So qualify in, and then it'll be a way of signaling. Are you a deep dive service designer along the way? And this is where we will, and we're honestly still figuring out exactly how we're going to do this, but we will gather people with some colleagues and some service designers and talk about that, because we know that there isn't a standard path to become a service designer. We know that some people have lots and lots of credentials, but are very new to how they might use them in the public service. We know there are colleagues who have tons of public service experience and fewer credentials. And so we're going to try to get at that through interviews or work examples or portfolio and references. What I'd suggest is, if this is your thing and you're applying, is find ways to show and share your experience and your competencies in your application, so that by the time it comes for a talk, like, it's clear where you're at. And like I said, if you're not sure about this, but you're still interested, like, that's still beautiful. There's huge value, I think, for all of us in growing this community across government. And so give yourself some space to decide whether you want to put your hand up as a service designer, or whether you want to put your hand up as someone who's interested in following along. You can join my club. Nicola, is there anything you want to add there?
Sorry, took me a second to unmute. Really just wanting to reinforce what Susan and Lily and Pam have shared. Yes, this is our opportunity as a program to test out for the first time a bit of a pilot around recruiting emerging skill sets. We believe this won't be the last such pilot, as we think about ways that our program can support host managers who are looking for skills that are perhaps harder to recruit for, in some cases harder to classify, and in some cases skill sets that maybe aren't necessarily a great match for the sort of traditional indeterminate stick with the same team for several years kind of model. And we really felt that service design fell in a lot of those spaces. Et absolument, on est très intéressé à voir le niveau, les compétences, les capacités et les projets que vous avez déjà travaillé dessus pendant votre temps dans le gouvernement. And we're really looking forward to having those discussions with many of you. So that's about where I would leave it.
Yeah. Where did we go? And I know we wanted to leave lots of room for questions. And if anybody's curious about what service designers do and wants to have that conversation, we can. We brought our friend Lena along. So if you're new to the field and you're curious about some things to do, there's a wonderful event booked for December 6th. Ryan Hum will moderate. Lena's colleague Norhan is speaking, along with Iman, whose last name I'm blanking on right now, from the Canadian Digital Service, and another colleague from IRCC. They're a great group. I think I see Kate. Hi, Kate. Lena and her colleague Emma have made a LinkedIn group for people who are enthusiastic about design as part of the public service. The link is in the deck, which is in the chat, but searching LinkedIn will find it. One of the favorite places, so I'm new to knowing this field called as service design, and one of my all-time favorite rabbit holes, with thanks to some colleagues here to get into, was the website for the Service Design Network. It's open and it has so many articles, and it's a global community. It's based in Germany. They tend to run in English, but they have lots of global thinkers and deep dive practitioners writing, and in a number of different languages. Le réseau de conception service, c'est une organisation d'Allemagne, mais les perspectives sont vraiment internationales. For those of you who are looking for a short trip, the talk that makes me cry every time I watch it, Dory Tunstall is Dean of Design at OCAD. And I like to be in her fan club. Her keynote is a beautiful thing. It's about decolonizing design. So if you're new to service design, or if you haven't seen Dean Dory's talk yet, can't recommend it. We know we're going to convene an informal community. It's lifting off. Had this week gone a little differently, it'd be a little more lifted off. But if you're interested, I would say connect through our colleague here's LinkedIn group, or drop me a line, and we'll make sure that as we're gathering, think about it as designer show and tell, things like that. We'll make good and sure that you get an invite. Question time, and I'll note we have our colleague Kate, who's the director of a team that works a lot with service design in policy contexts. Kate's here, and Lena, who works with Kate as a service designer. And so the kinds of things that come up for them, a lot of what we're learning and doing has been informed by their experience. So I'll add some thank you. Okay, I'll be quiet now. And I'm going to take direction from Lily and Pam and whoever wants to let us know what's coming up in Slido.
Yes, we've got Slido running in the background. So some questions are specifically about the service design stream and some are a little bit more broad. I know Pam has been looking in the background, and so I'm wondering if she wants to flag any service design questions she's seen through her little review while I was running the slides.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the first question that I have is if I previously had secret clearance for a position and my current role only requires reliability, does that mean I'm out for the service delivery stream?
It should not mean that at all. If you've had secret clearance in the past, if by chance it's now expired, secret clearance typically lasts for 10 years before needing to be renewed. So I would first check whether your previous secret clearance is still valid. But certainly I did put a comment in the chat on Zoom just to flag that if you're not sure whether you have valid secret clearance right now or you haven't yet pursued secret clearance, don't let that stop you from applying. It would be a precondition before an offer could be made, but certainly it's something that we can work through with you. So not a barrier to applying.
So similarly, if they've never had secret clearance, but no reason to believe they wouldn't be eligible, then we can work through it. Okay. Okay, another question. Do you need any tech or IT specialization for service design?
I'm going to take a run at this and I'm going to say no. But then I'm going to turn the floor to Lena, our service designer colleague, and invite her to correct me as she sees fit.
Excellent. So we're sticking with no?
So what was the question? Do you need any tech IT specialization for service design?
Mm-hmm.
I would say no, and I think that goes to the difference between maybe something like UX UI design, where it is very technology application focused, and the work that we do as service designers in government can be a little bit higher up in terms of like mixing with policy and different ideas. So yeah, and I did want to mention something, Susan. You had talked about how service design is about designing better service for citizens. And I would say yes, 100%. But also within the context that we work at TBS, we're not interacting with citizens that much, but you're always interacting with somebody. So some of the projects I've worked on have been, how do we improve the onboarding experience for analysts? It could be employee experience. How do we improve the reporting experience for other departments? So it can also be not directly with citizens. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. I'm so glad you were able to join us today.
I've got another question that speaks specifically to service design. Is there anything beyond clicking "Consider me for service design stream" that we need to do when we apply for free agents?
And Lily's kind of the boss here, but I would say at this point, no. Your first job is to go through the recruitment process and hopefully get yourself into the program. If you want to bring us joy in our day, when you're putting together your package, include some service design examples. So like give us a feel for the fact that this is something that you have background in and are passionate about doing more about. And I think the unasked question part of that is, does it mean that you might get to do some extra interviewing? It does. But like I said, first, you get into the program, and then we will sort out the service design stream part of that. So.
And can I add to that definitely do please make sure that, as Susan said, as you demonstrate how you meet the free agent attributes, it's great if some of those examples speak to your service design background and experiences. If you could also make sure your CV mentions either education or relevant experience, that would be super helpful too. Thank you.
And in the application process, and I think Lily has talked about this, or will, we talk about free agent attributes. One of them is empathy, which is also core to like every design thing going. So there's lots of crosswalks. Not to say that everybody's going to demonstrate empathy using design experiences. I did not apply to the program as a designer. I love design, but I'm not one. So how, like, you do you, but where there's room to draw links in the application, that would be incredibly helpful.
Okay, that actually is the end of the very specific service design. Oh no, we got to do one. Okay. Okay, so based on the comments, is service design basically similar to program design and or process design?
There's a lot of conversation around that. I would argue that good service design informs good program design and good process design, but I'm going to see if, and only because I've heard her speak really thoughtfully to it, if Kate is able to unmute. We invited her here, so I think we should let her talk.
Totally. So, and Lena should also jump in on this one because she's the resident expert. But I think good service design is designing good processes. It is designing good programs. It is designing good policy. It's really thinking about who is the person at the end of this service or process, who interacts with it, what works well for them, and to Susan's point about empathy, like making sure we're really putting ourselves in their shoes, and so that, like, what does good look like? Lena, do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The other thing I was going to mention is that I think that there's definitely overlaps between process design and program design, for example. But service design as a whole is its own discipline in the way that, like, you know, Agile has become its own discipline with like practices and tools and things of that sort. And it is possible that you haven't heard of service design before, and then you go and dig deeper into it and you're like, wow, this is what I do. Like, I'm a service designer. So that's also possible because we're really just like packaging lots of different tools and techniques into the umbrella of service design. So I would definitely suggest visiting the service design network that Susan mentioned, because that goes into more details of the specific approaches.
Okay, we have a basic question here. If you make it to free agent but not service design stream, can you still work as a free agent?
Oh, let me take that one. Oh yes, absolutely. Because free agents do so many different things. I can't even thoughtfully articulate the breadth. There's a lot of generalists. I came in doing facilitation and engagement. We've got a meteorologist on the team. We've had people doing like deep scientific things or deep tech. We have a death doula on the team whose work with us is different, like really broad. So when you come in, As a free agent, you're then taking on assignments that reflect your skills and your interests, where you can find a match with a host manager to do those. For me, where I'm kind of a service design newbie, but very interested, I try to put myself in places where I can learn more about that, like working with people who have way more experience than me. But yeah, if you come in as a free agent and not as a service designer, like the world is still your oyster. Did any of the others on the call want to elaborate on that?
I think you got it. Anyone else?
I think I want to actually build a little piece on that, is give yourselves room for surprise. What I thought the kinds of roles I wanted to take on coming into the program, I've done quite a bit of that, but I've also pivoted in ways that nobody could have told 2 years ago, Susan, that were going to happen. And I think part of it is giving yourself the space to shift and evolve based on what you're seeing and what you're exploring. So, okay, all done, Lily.
I see Pam's off mute. I know we have a couple questions, specifically asking about what happens if you're having difficulty finding an assignment, or you're between assignments. I know Nicola had a pretty great response to that yesterday, so I'll share it over her way.
I'm supposed to remember what I said yesterday. Yeah, absolutely. So when you join the free agent program, and Lily and Pam talked about a lot of these kind of both sort of the benefits of being a free agent and the responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is you do have to 100% of the time be on assignment. Does that mean you're working 365 days out of the year? No, you are an indeterminate public servant. You get vacation like anyone else. You have the same benefits available to you. So that means you might build some vacation time towards the end of one assignment or the start of another, for example. So that's just explaining to you that you will have opportunity to have some space where you're not in the office as much as we are these days on that assignment. You also, with all of the supports that the program offers, have access to an enormous number of opportunities. So if you're approaching the end of an assignment, you're knowing that you need to secure another assignment for the day after your current assignment ends. And that includes the vast number of requests that Pam gets in and shares with the community. It also includes working your own network, talking with other free agents, letting them know what you're looking for, working with your talent manager. And if worst case scenario comes along and like a week before you're due to start, your next host manager says, oh my God, I just lost my funding, then the community kicks in. We support people. We help find an assignment for that person. Does it mean that that new assignment is going to tick every single one of your wish list items? Not necessarily. And maybe it's a 6-month opportunity to learn something new as you transition and look for the next kind of perfect opportunity. So the community will support you, and it is, though, part of a bit of self-reflection about whether free agency is right for you, would be thinking about your readiness to pitch and look and find assignments with coaching from the community.
Thanks, Nicola. Okay, so the next question, I'm just going to answer it because I know the answer to this one. The question is, how do I find out about potential first assignments in order to deploy? The answer is we shared the link to the database with you. So, some free agents choose to stay where they are currently for their first assignment. So, sometimes your current manager is like, I want to keep you here for a little while longer, but if I give you some, new work to do or to set up an assignment with us, and I'm willing to pay the program fee to make it happen, that does happen, but a lot of free agents, myself included, I jumped right in with both feet and moved on to a new assignment. Found out about it because the business manager at the time shared the link to the database with me. So you could expect that to happen. Susan.
And I'll just chime in on both of those because I remember how terrified I was about the idea of having to find a job. And I jumped in and I was good to go with it, but it wasn't that I was without fear. And the lesson I've learned, and when Nicholas says the community will step up, like it's not uncommon for us as free agents to start to put the feelers out to people we know to say, I'm starting to think about my next assignment. I'd like to do something that includes this and this and this topic, and my dream departments are whatever they are. And people help. And demand for people to come and do projects is higher than you might think, like a lot higher than you might think. And if people find out that you've got a spare month or 3 months or 6 months, there's amazing things to get done, and there's the need. So I would say the responsibility and the bravery are needed, but know that like, it's okay. You can do this.
Just taking a look through to see what our next question might make the most sense to be. We're getting a little bit of like a few questions clustered around things like second language learning. So maybe I can let Nicola jump in since we have spoken to this a little bit in the past. And we have touched on a little bit of the development side, but this is very specific. So there's a few questions on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without knowing, I haven't looked at all the questions yet, but comme programme, on supporte absolument le bilinguisme. So we are absolutely supporters of you as individuals in growing your second language, maintaining, improving language skills, to support your individual growth, and to support your readiness in taking on assignments where the ability to communicate in both languages can help. So each home department, and I did notice some of the questions seem to be mixing up home departments and host departments. So I'll say there are 4 home departments. That's where you would be based. That's where your indeterminate position is. And then the host departments are the spots you would go out on assignments. They would host you for certain periods of time. So each home department has slightly different offerings around language training. In part because we operate within the offerings of our respective HR departments, etc. So some of the home departments offer some online language training, some offer like part-time conversational, like a couple hours a week kind of offerings. Some offer both. The program is not structured to onboard a lot of people who are hopeful to get full-time language training. So if that is you, I'll be honest, and I gave this advice in the last call, if you're somewhere where you think, if I stick around a little bit longer, I'm this close to getting full-time language training, that may be something you want to weigh in terms of your professional development. It's something we have thought about and looked at as a program, but because we rely entirely on recovery of salary, our budget is not large enough to absorb people going off on 10, 12, 20 weeks of full-time language training. So just something that we like to be transparent about up front. But absolutely some language training is available.
I have one just like point of clarification to add to this, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that general state first because I think that's important. This is a little bit more specific given that we are asking for language levels. For those who have taken those interim second language evaluations during COVID, are they welcome to list those as their results on the free agent application?
Absolutely. And if you wouldn't mind, so perhaps somewhere in one of the boxes, you could signal, or do we actually ask about expiry dates, don't we?
We do, yes.
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. Because if your expiry is coming up, in any case, we would need to get the levels revalidated.
Thanks, Nicola. I've got a couple of questions. I'm just going to say one of them that's quite interesting here. The description says there are not many opportunities in the regions as the NCR. Is there a bias towards hiring those who are in the NCR? So maybe I'll let either Nicola or even Walter's welcome to jump in just to talk a little bit about the split that we have in the program.
So absolutely, all 4 home departments, even TBS, who does not have a regional presence, do have regional free agents. And regional free agents do have the ability to take on assignments in the NCR, within their own region, in other regions. I did see a question in there about, would that mean that their host managers would pay for them to move to the NCR? That is not the circumstance that we'd be talking about here. This would be working remotely for a host manager in a different part of Canada. Maybe I have seen, we had someone from TBS take on an assignment with the space agency, and they paid for a site visit, for example. So that there may exceptionally be some opportunities to come on site, but those are by exception. Hopefully that covered it off.
Okay. Am I, am I doing the next one? Okay, I'm just going to do the top question because I like this one. How long do free agents generally stay with the program? What is exit like? This varies wildly. We've had people that got hired in the first cohort who are still here 5.5 years later. And we've had other people exit very quickly. I'm not sure that we have a general answer to that, but most of us seem pretty happy to stick around. And as for exit, what does that look like? You find a new substantive position, whether that's through deployment or through promotion to somewhere else, whatever the case may be. Your substantive shifts, it creates a vacancy within the program. Lily, I'll ask you to pick the next one.
That's awesome. I put some context in the chat. There is definitely a broad range. And then we also, I wanted to mention as well, because my colleague had highlighted it before, that we have people in the program from almost every stage of your career, from relatively early, lots of mid-level public servants who want a chance to move around and sort of skill up or see the rest of government. And then we also have some free agents who are at the end of their career. So we have just in effect lost a few who have reached the end of their career and are retiring and moving on to their next stage in life. So I just want to put a shout out there that, like, it doesn't matter what age you are or any of that kind of stuff. Like, we are quite welcoming to whatever sort of stage of your career you're at. I see Nicola came off mute.
I love how you each express that. And the one thing I would add that is that as talent manager, part of my role is supporting free agents who maybe are reaching a point where the program's not a fit for them anymore. And it's not something that anyone should shy away from at any point in their career, free agent or not. Shouldn't we all be happy about where we're working and feel fulfilled and engaged and feel like we're continuing to learn and contribute value? And so absolutely, people are supported from when they arrive to when it's the right time for them to move on.
Got another great question that I'm excited to actually clarify, since we're using government tools in the way that they're able to function, but they don't always serve us completely as we need because we're an interdepartmental program. So the question is, the current posting on jobs.gc.ca is with Transport Canada. What exactly does that mean? Is Transport Canada the host for Canada's free agents? So I will say at the outset that jobs.gc.ca, great tool, super glad we have it. I have walked through tools in other organizations that are maybe less up to date. I will say that it's got some limitations. We weren't able, unfortunately, to post as all 4 home departments, so we couldn't also have NRCan, ISED, and TBS represented as the hiring departments, even though they are. So the idea behind posting to jobs.gc.ca in this case was to get as many eyes on the poster as possible. We recognize that not every public servant is going to be spending a lot of their free time necessarily on Twitter, on our LinkedIn. We have tried to put it a lot of places, Facebook, informal groups, on the GC tools, etc. But we knew that a lot of people have that auto notification set up on jobs.gc.ca. So that is why we decided to use it. It's our first time using it this year, so I really appreciate that you posted that question. I will say that all of the hiring departments have some level of vacancy, whether that's a few places or more, as in the case of ISED, because they're a newer department. So even though it says Transport Canada on there, for the service design stream specifically, that will be housed at TBS, and then there will be positions at the other 4 home departments, as other 3 home departments. I added one in the background, sorry. I will pass the parole over to Pam for the next question.
Okay, so there's a couple of regional folks after my heart here. I'm in Winnipeg, for those who don't know. Okay, so question. I'm in the region and wondering if a hiring manager or department want on-site commitment where travel is required, and will reimbursement be possible? If someone hires you knowing that you are not in the city that they want you to work in, that's part of the conversation before they decide to hire you. And if a hiring manager does require you to attend the office, to attend an event or whatever the case may be as part of that assignment, they would be expected to reimburse for that they would pay for it. They would, in my experience anyways, they have made that arrangement, and only when I'm traveling for program business am I actually booking it and getting my talent manager to approve, or whoever does the approvals of the expenses, to approve that within my home department. So travel, for the 2 people that raise this sort of question, all through the assignment, if it is assignment related travel.
Thanks, Pam. There was one other question that related to that. What I saw here.
I think I just got rid of it because it was.
Oh, you got rid of both.
The same. Yeah. It's a
beautiful. Excellent. I know there was a few questions specifically about promotions and upward mobility within the program. Maybe I can toss that over to Nicola.
Sure, absolutely. So the free agent program is not a developmental program. So we're not explicitly structured to kind of accompany free agents through a deliberate upward movement process in your career. And we do have people who come in who are not looking for upward mobility. They're looking to do interesting work, etc. That said, like any other manager who is working to support the development of members of their team, each of the home department talent managers are there to work through what that development looks like person to person. And there are, in some of the home departments that have been around the longest, there have been some promotional opportunities provided on a case-by-case basis, merit-based promotions. The program is looking at what that could look like going forward overall, what is kind of a coherent approach for the program as a whole. So it's not certainly it's not something that we're going to say come in, join us, and a year from now you'll be promoted 2 or 3 levels upwards, but it is something, a possibility that we look at.
I can do the next one. Okay, good question. Are free agents more vulnerable in case we have another drought? As someone who, sorry, not a tear, who was in fact affected by this back in the day, I have to say that, I am less worried about it now than I was then personally. There's no saying what the future might hold, and I don't want to make any commitments on this front, but what I can say is that the free agents tend to be available to do short-term work that might otherwise, in the case of no staff, what choice do you have? You take it to consultants from the exterior, right? So in the case of a DRAP situation, our home departments don't generally pay our salaries. It's the host that does. So, and we aren't really particular about whether, as a program, whether we collect that money from A base, B base, like pay us the money, and we're happy. If you can free it up, we'll take your cash. So we might actually be less vulnerable. Maybe Nicola wants to add a little to that.
Yeah, like I would say, no one knows the future, and I've been impacted in the private and public sector through jobs cut exercises. But another factor that I like to think about is that typically when there are big full-scale reduction exercises, for something to be put forward, it has to actually yield savings for the program, for the department that's putting it forward. And in this case, each of our departments actually give us $0 to run our programs. We operate, as I've probably now said 3 or 4 times, entirely on salary recovery, which is the point Pam was just making. So no way to say in any fashion, but I wouldn't consider ourselves to have a big bullseye on our back in those types of exercises.
Thanks, Nicola. I noticed we're getting right to the end of our time period today, but I have one question that says, organizationally, what part of TBS is hosting the service design function? So if you join the service design stream, where will you live at TBS?
Great question. So the part of TBS that hosts both the free agent program and the surge capacity is priorities and planning. So it's the part of the department that has the strategic policy function, the folks who coordinate math for government, crown corporations, all sorts of various pieces, and that's where we're based. Great.
We are at the end of our hour together, so I want to thank everyone who joined us today, sharing all your questions. That was great. We got through a lot of them. You'll notice in Slido that Pam and I have been adding responses to the ones that were a little bit easier and maybe less nuanced, that were more clear cut. So if you take a look, you may find the answer to your question there. Also want to thank all the rest of the support team who appeared, Nicola and Susan and Lena and Kate and everyone from TBS Surge team, and Walter, our other talent manager from ISED, who's also joined us today. So this recording will be available again at that same GC Collab link where you found the details for today's session. So stay tuned for that to be put up later today or tomorrow morning. And we really appreciate the time you took with us today. We hope you'll apply. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for coming and joining and asking questions. That's awesome.